Now welcome to another edition of News from Naboo with Thor's Lightning Takes. And let's get right to the news.
All right, we said we were going to kind of get back to talking about Ahsoka now that the actors and directors are talking about Ahsoka, and I found this really interesting. They talk about the fact that they opened up a brand new galaxy within Star Wars, and why they did it.
Okay, love to hear the answer to this one.
I figured this is something you'd be interested in. Well, Dave Filoni, he felt like he had to expand the Star Wars universe in order to justify the fact that Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn were not found. He said, if they were in the Star Wars galaxy, the old Star Wars galaxy that we know, I think somebody would have found them. There's too many starships. There's too many people traveling. You get a signal out, and I think you could have found them if they wanted to be found. I had to really throw them far afield.
But what about somewhere in the unknown regions?
He
that
just,
only
I
the
guess,
Purrgil
assumed that
knew about?
no matter where you were, you could get a signal out and they'd figure it out, and he just
understand.
threw them as far as he could and saw what happens.
I mean, I understand they had the Star Destroyer taken, so they have technology to, in theory, they have TIE fighters, they have shuttles. I get where he's coming from, but you could have still made something.
Well, and Ezra, for all we know, could have reached out through the Force and found some Force-sensitive or something nearby and guided somebody to him. Instead, he got stuck somewhere.
Sure.
That even he couldn't get back from.
If you go to the unknown regions, there's the chaos, which makes it very difficult to travel already. And you could have just come up with the idea that it's somewhere. I mean, look at Exegol, for example. I know that's not like the example everybody wants to go to for something, but there could be parts of the galaxy that are extremely difficult to get to that you can't just get a signal in and out of, and that they were stuck there. I don't know that you had to go to a whole other galaxy just to justify two characters and where they were.
Well, you should blame George Lucas then.
Oh, boy.
That's where we go next. Filoni says that George Lucas is the one who, laid the groundwork in the prequels for having other galaxies.
Okay.
He says, I think it's in Attack of the Clones. If you look, there's an image of the galaxy, and then there's actually these smaller galaxies near it. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, so he saw an image that, look, there's the galaxy, and what are those? Those other galaxies, maybe? And so he went with that.
So he didn't want to, shoot him a text and be like, how do you feel about me bringing in another galaxy? How do you think George would feel about that? I don't think he'd be opposed to it. I have no idea. I'm just saying, I'm curious what he would think.
Well, and he does give us some interesting things to look at, some interesting culture to explore in a way. He created this opportunity where you can now see these other rituals, these ancient rituals for opening these galaxies, such as the Night Sisters, and their way of travel.
There.
That must be where they originated.
Well, then how did they get to the other galaxy?
Maybe the same way that they got in with the Purrgil.
But the Purrgil seemed to do a one-way trip.
Or it could be an ancient ritual. I mean, they had these weird temples. They made maps. They somehow, in the past, were able to do it.
I guess where I have issue is a galaxy is huge. Hundreds of billions of stars, an incalculable amount of space and time.
Well, now there's another one.
there you go. I've as I've said before, the human mind cannot even comprehend the size of a galaxy. We can't even really visualize the size of our own solar system, for crying out loud. It's hard to think that it takes 8 minutes for light to get from the sun to here. This galaxy is gigantic, and it's we went to another one.
But Dave also says, you know me, I plan for the long game. I really do. And that encompasses a lot more than it used to, as I help other people as well. I'm setting up what seems to be a larger conflict for the Imperial Remnant. That conflict can't just mirror what we've seen before, it has to take on a different shape. It can't just be the Empire versus what looks like the Rebellion or even the Republic. It has to be visually different. I'm assuming bringing in the Night Sisters, bringing in maybe relics or things from the other galaxy, he can try to make it different.
Dave? Why didn't you stop the sequels from happening then? Because that is
exactly... He wasn't the CCO
I know. I'm simply saying, that is exactly what the sequels did.
And he didn't have any control over that.
So it makes me hope and feel like Dave is not a sequel lover.
He's like, I don't want it to look like everything else.
But he's basically... It's basically an indirect shot at him, right? Because that's what the sequels did. It's we did Resistance versus First Order. It's totally not Rebellion versus Empire.
No, totally different.
Oh, they don't have Star Destroyers and X-Wings and TIE Fighters. No, it's not the same thing all over again, we swear.
The next thing they get into is Baylan Skoll and the untimely passing of Ray Stevenson and how that may affect the story going forward.
That is another curious question.
As we know, he left our last look at Baylan, morally gray, former Jedi, standing on top of the giant statues of Mortis gods from the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
That was kind of amazing. That was a big moment for a lot of people, especially people who've seen Clone Wars, who've seen Rebels.
Who've seen Clone Wars and Rebels, really.
And he addresses that. Filoni says, you have to be careful with that. I know it's a very specific group of people that would even know what those statues are, but I thought it was an exciting image, and it does give you the shape of what Baylan is after. He kind of sees Baylan as a seeker, like he sees Ahsoka. Someone wrestling with the memory of what they were taught, with like the subsequent like delusions that have set in. He says he's a person that survived the Clone Wars, that was trained in the waxing, waning days of the Jedi Knights, like Anakin. He saw his order, his way of life fall apart, and he's basically deemed it a failure. That way did not work. That it's not something worth resurrecting, which he tells Shin. I didn't teach you to be a Jedi, I taught you to be something more.
And I love how everybody forgets that the Jedi lasted for like 1,000 generations.
Right, but the generations that Baylan saw, he saw the decline. Just like Qui-Gon was seeing the decline.
Okay. Here's my analogy I always go to.
You can't see the past and go, everything was perfect.
Here's my analogy I always go to. You buy a car 20 years ago, you drive the thing for 500,000 miles, it never gives you any problems. It breaks down one day, and you're like, I would never buy that car again.
Well, a lot of people, that's just what happens over time, though, right? I mean, I love my car. Why? It doesn't have any problems. If that car was having problems all the time, I'd be like, my car's a piece of junk.
Yeah.
I hate my car.
Yeah.
I'm not looking back and saying, my car was perfect.
Well, that's the problem. You should. Again, the car analogy, like if it goes that long and you drive it literally 20 years, I mean, oil changes, tire, there are things that you're maintenance, right? Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden one day it breaks down and you're like, I would never buy that car again. That car's legacy is failure, as Luke basically says of the Jedi. Like, what? Like, you can be mad that it broke down. You can be like, that sucks. But to not go back to that same type of car seems really strange to me.
Well, Filoni goes on to say, Baylan tried to take the teachings that he learned as a young person to create his own way of being. And he's looked at the cycle of things and said, enough with this. If I have this power, I should wield it. I should be the one making the decisions. Which a lot of people with power decide that's the way to go. He's also very certain that what he's doing now is the right thing.
Okay.
Filoni isn't sure yet what they're doing with Stevenson's absence now, but he did say that the story is not complete.
Obviously.
Yeah. He goes on to say, obviously there's a story there. We're in a wait-and-see pattern at this point, but I'm glad the conversation is about Rey and how great he was. I used to have many debates with him and say, Rey, you're the villain here. And he'd be like, I don't think so. I was like, I know you don't think so, but you are. I love that you're playing it like you're not, which is exactly the way Baylan thinks.
I think the only thing that makes Baylan a true villain is he murders a lot of people at the beginning.
Yeah.
Other than that, you would have a hard time
when he brings
being
back
like...
Thrawn, which is someone that the audience we deem as bad.
Well, yes. I'm not saying that like we, the audience, can't look at that and go, oh, Thrawn, bad, bringing him back, bad. But he doesn't... That is even what his point was. And that doesn't mean like that's makes it right, don't get me wrong. But like if you exclude that opening scene where he's just like slaughtering, oh, you're in my way, so I'm going to slaughter you, New Republic idiots who let me on board. Like, you have a hard time like pinpointing that whatever would make him the villain of the story.
Filoni does comment that he thinks that Rey would have been over the moon with how his character has been received. That the big regret here is he didn't get to experience that.
Yeah, that sucks.
He says he's glad that he was at Celebration. He got to see the trailer. He got the taste from the fans. And fans have been nothing but wonderful about Rey and the character. He was a standout.
Well, I mean, the highlights for me were Baylan. The Ray Stevenson performance as Baylan was fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I liked Shin.
Oh, yeah.
And Amon Esfande as Ezra was pinpoint
they were
accurate.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Other than that, it's some not as good stuff.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, we're in a wait-and-see pattern. They've not officially announced yet if Dave's getting a second season. They know that there's a movie that's getting worked on. So for now, back to the holding pattern. Hopefully, I really do want to see continuation of Baylan's story. I want to see what he becomes, what his end game here is.
This feels like a bad sign for Ahsoka season 2.
That nobody knows what's happening?
Well, usually the decision will get made like in the weeks that follow, right? You'll see how the show does, fan reaction, numbers. We have all that for the most part. And
But
the
they
fact
still
that,
haven't said anything?
yeah, the fact that they've now are kind of, after the fact kind of talking about it, you would think if you were going to do a season 2, you would really want to incorporate that into your kind of post-game press conference here, to use a sports analogy, right?
Yeah,
that you'd be like trying to hype
worrisome.
up like this, everything that you watch is going to the next season and we're going to announce it now. Instead, here we are like a month out after it and they haven't decided yet. That seems sketchy.
It's rough,
Yeah.
to say the least. But that's all the news we've got for you this time.
What? You stole my line.
Well, then say your lines.
I didn't know we were done. You just kind of stopped.
That's because I'm done.
All right. Well, that is going to be then all we got for you this time. Now, your turn. Take to the comments below. Tell us what you think of any and all of today's news. Tell us what you think about the odds of Ahsoka Season 2, or do you even want to see an Ahsoka Season 2? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.